Hey everyone, welcome to Barter Hordes. My name is Robert. This is Friday, so I'm supposed to make videos on Friday. That's what I keep telling myself, even though I don't really have a lot to say about much these days. But I wanted to check in with you on the little bit that I've been reading and some of the things that I've been watching. Not too much on other issues. I just want to stick to media consumption today. Before I get to the books, since this is primarily a book channel, I want to mention that if you are following the BookTube Prize this year and you're interested in what the judges from the quarterfinals had to say about their judging experience from that round, if you'll go to the BookTube Prize channel, I've compiled a playlist there for the 2020 quarterfinals that has, I think, between 40 and 50 videos now from the judges talking about their experience reading and ranking the books in the groups that they judged. So you can find all of the videos in one easy place rather than having to hunt through keyword search terms and things like that. If you're a judge and you made such a video and I have not included it on that playlist, please send me a message because somehow I've overlooked it. That's happened a couple of times already this round. And so if that happens, let me know. It's not intentional. I just don't see everything. And I'll gladly add your video to the playlist too. I'll do the same thing again for the semifinals and the finals as well. So if you're looking for the judges' reactions, you can find them in one convenient location. As far as watching my AFI Films project, I have now seen, I can't remember if it's 20 or 21 of the 100 films on the AFI Top 100 10th Anniversary list. I watched 2 this week. I watched the 1960 version of Spartacus with Kirk Douglas, and then I watched the 1967 film Bonnie and Clyde with Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway. And I can't really say I enjoyed either one of them that much. I just, for some reason, do not get along with the film aesthetic from the 1960s. The acting to me seems terrible. Some of the casting choices are questionable. I mean, the fact that Kirk Douglas was cast as a Thracian, Spartacus, with his, California looks and his crew cut, of all things, it just was kind of laughable. But I don't know if it's me or if it's just that period of films hasn't dated well. I'm not really sure, but I didn't really enjoy either one. I have seen Spartacus before a long time ago. It's back in that same generation as Ben-Hur and movies like that. And the thing that disappointed me the most in rewatching this was how little it had to do with Spartacus becoming a champion gladiator and his rise to fame as the general of this breakaway slave army. They only show him in one gladiator match, which is at his school instead of in the big Colosseum, and he loses it. He's only spared because the other gladiator goes rogue and tries to kill the Romans instead of killing Spartacus, and that's what prompts the rebellion and the breakout from the school and starts the slave army. And then suddenly Spartacus is the general of this slave army. So they glossed over a whole lot of the myth or the story. We don't know if it's actual history or just myth, or at least I don't know. So I didn't find it all that compelling, and it was pretty long. The remake of Spartacus for, I can't remember if it's HBO or Netflix, which I've seen in dribs and drabs over the years, is much more prurient. I mean, there's lots of sex, there's lots of violence, but I think the acting is a little bit more believable, credible, human than what we saw in the 1960s film. And the Bonnie and Clyde film, I thought, was just a disaster of bad acting, overacting, just silliness, lots of extraneous noise, people just screaming all the time. I've never understood the attraction to Warren Beatty as an actor, and this has to be the worst film he's ever made. And I know he made Ishtar. I just found it dreadful from start to finish. There wasn't anything about that movie that I found particularly appealing, except the fact that Faye Dunaway is easy to look at. I just didn't get it. So it might just be me, but 1960s movies and me aren't a good match. The next film that comes up in my random generator from this list is from 1997, and that is Titanic. Yes, I've seen Titanic before, but unlike a lot of people, I've only watched it one time, a long, long time ago. And as much as I adore Kate Winslet, I'm not that big a fan of Leonardo DiCaprio. And there's some things about the movie that have kind of been lampooned over the years as being farcical. But I'm gonna watch it again, and I'm sure I'll enjoy parts of it. I think parts of it are really touching. So that's next on the movie list. As far as K-dramas, and if you've been following my channel in recent weeks, I've been alternating a K-drama series with a movie, kind of the movie in between new series for me. And so I have finished 2 series and am almost finished with a third one. The one that I was just about to finish last week, I mentioned to you already, is Oh My Ghost, which is kind of a funny but touching story about the belief that some ghosts, until they settle their grudges, can't ascend into heaven. And there's a young woman who thinks her grudge is that she died a virgin. Turns out there's something else that is actually her grudge that she discovers over time. She possesses a very shy, timid chef's assistant, and represents a complete change of personality for the chef's assistant. And there's a love story between the chef's assistant and the chef, a Gordon Ramsay style character. He's very tough on his staff, but he's very well known. He's a reality TV chef. So it was fun. I enjoyed it a lot. And then I watched what has been, for me so far, my favorite of all the series I've seen. I've seen about a dozen now, and that is on Netflix, and it's Crash Landing on You. I just could not get enough of this one. It's one season, 16 episodes long. Each episode's a little over an hour. It is very simply the story of a young woman from Seoul who is an heiress / self-made businesswoman in the style industry. She's become a big deal. She's the CEO of her own corporation. She broke away from her family's big business and started her own. And she is doing some commercial spots for some of her products. And she's paragliding, and she's experienced as a paraglider. And when she goes up, she's caught in a vicious storm, an actual tornado. She's caught in the storm, and it blows her way off course, and she ends up crash landing in North Korea, and is found by this patrol who thinks, of course, she's bound to be a spy of some kind. And so there's some humor involved because she's anything but a spy, and they are completely suspicious of her from the beginning. But she and the captain form a relationship. And he makes it his mission not to get her in trouble by reporting her, but to try to get her back to South Korea safely and all the problems they have. And the people that make up this cast are just the best. The 4 guys who make up the captain's squad are just hysterical. They're wonderful. They're wonderful. And the women from the captain's village, who are kind of like the mommy mafia, are just brilliant. And it's really kind of funny because one of the lead women in the mommy mafia in this particular show was also one of the lead women in the mommy mafia in When the Camellias Bloom. And so it's been a lot of fun to see the same actors show up in different series in completely different roles. In fact, Crash Landing on You had 4 actors that I had seen in other series already, and I've only watched about a dozen. So there's really a lot of cross-referencing of actors, and it's just wonderful. Between Crash Landing on You and Itaewon Class, Netflix is hitting its stride with Korean drama. The one I just started last night, and I'll finish tonight because it's extremely short, is called Nightmare High. It's only 12 episodes long. Each episode's only about 15 minutes long, so the whole thing's 3 or 4 hours. And it's a series of vignettes of students in this 11th grade classroom at a Korean high school. Their homeroom teacher has had an accident and is out for an extended period of time, and so the substitute comes in, and he runs the counseling office. And one by one, students end up going to his counseling office, and he gives them really bizarre advice and gifts and powers. And each of these vignettes becomes kind of a Faustian bargain where the student ends up signing a contract in blood to gain a power that they really want. And of course, it always turns out badly. I've seen 3 of the 6 so far. So it's interesting. It's got a little bit of a flavor of Black Mirror or The Twilight Zone or Dr. Faustus, if you're more classically bent. It's not my favorite of the series that I've watched, but it's so short it's worth watching for 3 or 4 hours. So I'll finish that one tonight. So that's where I stand on what I've been watching. On the books that I finished 3 books, 2 of which I talked about fairly extensively last week, so I don't think I'm going to really say much more about them here. The first was The Collected Schizophrenias by Esmé Weijun Wang, which is a series of essays about her own diagnosis as a combination of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. It didn't end well for me. The last essay really calls into question a lot of things that I would have talked about, but she goes off into some really bizarre, you can call them holistic medicine, but it's just insanity. She actually, or at least she expects us to believe that at the end that she's been maintaining her lack of hallucinations for the last 4 years by tying a sacred ribbon to her ankle. Sorry, I can't buy that. But anyway, so that one wasn't for me. And then The Silent Patient, possibly the most dismal book I've read in months, by Alex Michaelides. It's supposed to be a psychological thriller, and there's a twist, but it's not really that impressive. And there's just so much wrong with this book that I am just horrified and baffled that this was a #1 New York Times bestseller. I get marketing hype, but when a book is this laughable, this awful, this cliched, how it makes it to #1 is beyond me. It's just absolutely horrendous. The one book that saved me a little bit was I did a buddy read of Jane Austen's Persuasion with Leslie Ring. I have read, going into this book, I have read all but 2 of Jane Austen's 6 completed novels. I hadn't read Persuasion, and I hadn't read Mansfield Park. I've read Pride and Prejudice probably 24 times because I always taught it with my senior students, but I hadn't read some of the others. And so this was interesting. And I got into some Voxer discussions with some of my friends about Captain Wentworth versus Mr. Darcy from Pride and Prejudice. And I am definitely Team Darcy. But a lot of these people were Team Wentworth, and I don't get the appeal. I'll make my case here very briefly that I don't think Wentworth is all that much. He doesn't really do anything noble until he writes his anguished letter to Anne very late in the book. But before that, and one of the comments that one of my debaters mentioned to me is that Wentworth was so faithful to Anne all these years. He had been having a dalliance right in front of Anne with Louisa for months and was probably on the verge of getting engaged when Louisa has her accident. How is that being faithful? Even if he's only doing it for spite, that's not much of a sign of a gentleman to me. So Wentworth, to me, no. Darcy is an arrogant bastard at the beginning of Pride and Prejudice. I won't deny that at all. But you see actual growth and change in Darcy, and he does a lot of things behind the scenes, not because he wants people to know that he's done these good deeds, but he does a lot of things behind the scenes for the Bennet family. And then when they show up at his property, Pemberley, because they think he's not there and they want to take a tour of the property while he's not there, and he actually is there, he's extremely gracious, even to Mr. and Mrs. Bennet, whom he has in the past insulted. And so he changes quite a bit. And so for me, Darcy is still her best male character. Let me know in the comments below whether you're Team Wentworth or Team Darcy. I've started 2 new books this week. Neither one is really capturing my wholehearted interest. One is Inland by Téa Obreht, which is a Western story of sorts. It's got a supernatural element to it, which I always eye roll a little bit. But I just don't really see where it's going or what's going to connect the 2 different storylines. I've read about 150 pages of it so far. The one part that I liked was the camels. You'll have to read the book to understand what I'm talking about. But I don't really see where it's going in any way that drives me to read it other than through obligation of reading my 50 pages every day. And then the second one that I started was Marlon James' Black Panther, Red Wolf. And I'm just lost. I'm 150 pages in or so, and I just don't know what's happening most of the time. I will say this, the Black Panther has kind of a funny sense of humor. He's very sarcastic to the narrator. At one part, they are crossing what's left of a drying up riverbed, looks more like a creek than anything. And the Black Panther tells him a story that the creek hates humans so much that when humans come, it seeps underground and flows underground to avoid humans. And the narrator, the boy, says, "Really?" He says, "No, it's the end of the rainy season." And that one actually made me laugh out loud. So there's a little bit of humor in that. But for the most part, I just don't understand what's happening. Maybe it'll become clearer as I get farther along, but if you're waiting for 200 pages in for people to start understanding what your book's about, you're risking losing some readers. I'm going to keep reading it, but I don't really know what's going on with that. It may just be me. I may just not be smart enough to follow what's going on. So my reading has been very mixed. My watching has mostly been very good on the K-dramas, not so great on the movies, but I've made some progress on my list. I'm now 20%, maybe a little bit more than 20% of the way done on my movie project, which is good. I didn't really make any progress this week on my music project because I discovered that Apple Music has a radio station for K-drama hits. And so I've been listening to that instead of classical music this week. And that's been actually really easy to fall asleep to. So I've been enjoying that. And then I have not read anything new on my backlist project, although I told you the next one I'm going to be reading is Sandra Cisneros' Woman Hollering Creek. So that's what's going on here. Not a whole lot. I just wanted to check in because it's Friday and I feel guilty when I don't make at least one video a week. I have a schedule on and a little post-it note of a different style video I could do every day of the week. So far, I've made none of them except for the Friday Reads videos. So I'm not sure if that's overly ambitious or what. But anyway, have a good weekend. Please stay safe. I know everybody's going back to life as if the pandemic is over, but it's not. Here in North Carolina, we have just had our worst 7-day period since the pandemic started for new coronavirus cases. So it's worse now than it ever has been in North Carolina and several other states. And people are still acting like it's over. And that's bad leadership on down. But anyway, you can't tell people what to think because they're just stubborn. I've given up on the human race being rational. Talk to you soon. Stay out of trouble. And let me know if you're Team Wentworth or Team Darcy. Bye, everybody.